Hello, everyone. This is Rick, and welcome to Astral Club. This is the Handbook of Astral Power. Before we get into it, just want to mention Patreon. If you'd like to support the channel, you can do so on the Patreon website. When you join, you get advanced commercial-free episodes on Sunday, a library of downloaded episodes for your podcast app, and of course, a Patreon email where we can talk back and forth privately rather than through the comments section. And if you're interested, there will be a link in the description. Next up, private lessons. If you'd like to work with me in a private lesson to learn how to astral project, be glad to work with you. All you have to do is go into the description and you'll see an email there. Just request information and I'll send it off to you. I have quite a library of astral projection books, some of which go back quite a ways. The one we're going to discuss today is a very interesting book. It's very simple and straightforward. Mr. Greene, who, by the way, just passed in 2019, he believed in writing books that were fairly easy to follow with basic instructions to astral project. He doesn't fill his book, and certainly this book is not filled with a lot of war stories like, you might get from time to time here on this channel. His focus was purely distilling down exercises to their purest form so that anyone with an average intelligence could read this book and start doing exercises that will help them to consciously astral project. So, as I said, this book is the Handbook of Astral Power by Richard Greene. It was published back in 1987. Unfortunately, it is now out of print. I checked it on Amazon. I checked it on eBay. If you want to buy this paperback now, you're going to have to pay anywhere between $40 and $70. So, when I bought it, I think I paid $14.95 maybe for it, but it's out of print. However, you're lucky because I'm going to offer you now one of the exercises completely free. And perhaps somewhere along the line, you can find a deal on this paperback and buy it for yourself. My exercise that I'm going to work with here today with you is on Chapter 12. It's Attaining Soul Consciousness. The techniques in this chapter are designed to help you reach the soul level of consciousness. This entails meeting and communicating with your higher self or your guardian angel, your guide. There's a number of terms you can use there, which is basically to attain a higher spiritual aspect. The purpose of attaining soul consciousness, attaining soul consciousness has multiple purposes. The most important one is that when in a state of soul consciousness, you actually can view and perceive your life from outside of yourself. That's a very unique perspective that ordinary humans walking around here in their physical bodies don't get to experience. Now, occasionally you'll hear about dissociative states, psychologically speaking, which generally aren't very pleasant, or drug experiences where somebody feels like they're outside their body. But normally, this is not a situation that the average person has in their lifetime. But, of course, through astral projection, you get this unique viewpoint. And that's one of the values of astral projection. So let's get into what I consider one of the simplest exercises to learn to astral project that is currently available. And you'll find that there's very familiar elements in here, and he just puts it in just the simplest way possible. So let's get into it. Now, keep in mind, when you do this exercise for the first time, you probably won't astral project. You might, but you probably won't the first time. So what you're doing is you're walking your consciousness, and by going into a little bit of a deeper state of concentration, you're actually helping to train your subconsciousness in what's involved with astral projection. And when you do this exercise, and whenever you do this exercise, or any astral projection exercise, you must always do so with a clear mind. You shouldn't be influenced by drugs or alcohol. It normally interferes with the process. 1 out of every 100 persons will tell me, oh no, taking this drug actually helps me to consciously astral project. Okay, there's always exceptions. But I find most people have an easier time with a clear mind, if for no other reason than having a better chance of remembering your experience. And secondly, to have a positive attitude. Never, ever do any astral projection exercises if you are feeling depressed, upset, angry, sad. Never do that, because what will happen is your subconscious will start connecting astral projection with sadness or depression, and it'll actively then try to sabotage the process because it doesn't want to experience those emotions. So that's my caution before we get into this. So he goes on under attaining soul consciousness. The first step involved with attaining soul consciousness, or knowledge and conversation with your higher self and your guides and allies and spirits and entities and angels, is to perform a rhythmic breathing exercise. I like to use pranayama breathing. It's an ancient Indian exercise. You can use whatever ones work for you if you have one currently you use when you meditate. But I like pranayama breathing. And pranayama breathing is 5-6-4-6. You inhale very slowly and steadily to a count of 5. And you inhale through your nose. You hold your breath to a count of 6. Then you exhale through your mouth slowly to a count of 4. Hold to a count of 6. Which is why it's called pranayama breathing, 5-6-4-6 breathing. If you do this, at first you'll struggle a little bit if you've never done conscious breathing before. But, just work at it a little bit and you'll get the hang of it. Conscious breathing allows one to become centered and to go into a deeper state of concentration, a deeper state of consciousness. That's why it's important to start with the breathing. Eventually, you may only need 30 seconds or a minute. When you're starting, you might need a little bit longer. You'll know when you're done because you'll feel more centered, more at peace. You'll notice the slight shift in consciousness. So when that is achieved, then you can stop and then go on to the exercise. Now, as I said, his exercises are fairly simple. So I think anybody could try them. His first step is visualize that your consciousness becomes a white ball of light about 6 inches in diameter. This is your astral consciousness. Now let this ball of white light float above, about 12 inches above your head. Within a relatively short time, you will feel as if you are actually floating out of your body as you experience sensations of floating. If this doesn't occur to you, then go ahead and imagine it. Because right now we're training our consciousness and our subconsciousness. However, you might feel lighter, in which case, go with it. Number 2, you now want to rise straight up into the air. So either you're doing this for real or you're imagining it, because that's still valuable. So you want to rise right up through the roof or the ceiling and keep on rising until you reach, he says, about 1,000 feet in the air. The important thing here is, look, I like to roll out. So when I did this process back in the 80s, I went ahead and switched it to the rollout method. He's using the float out method. whichever one you're more attracted to, whichever one may have been more successful for you. The main thing about the float out method, though, is you want to avoid bouncing up against the ceiling, which often happens to newbies. So the whole idea is if you use the float out method, you want to go all the way out, right on up, right through the ceiling, right on up high into the air. Now, he mentions 1,000 feet, and that's probably ideal. However, if you're someone who has a problem with heights and you think you might feel fear, then basically stay at like rooftop level. Typically, that won't trigger most people. And then that's the second step. The third step, he says, of course, is to continue to rise straight up in the air. If you'd like, and you're not afraid of heights or anything, you can actually leave the atmosphere of Earth. I mean, you can continue rising, and you can turn around and see the Earth. I mean, I've done that numerous times. You can keep rising right up into deep space. But if that's too much for you, you can still stay, as I said, at a level, at a height that is comfortable for you. That's the main point. But it's best if you can rise straight up if you're comfortable with that. Number 4, at this point, either think mentally, or if you want, say it verbally. I'd rather you do it mentally. Saying something verbally, I feel, takes you out of your meditative state. Or at least you're risking leaving your meditative state by speaking verbally. So my advice is you do it mentally. And so you want to now communicate with your divine higher intelligence, your allies, your spirit, your guardian angel, your guide, what have you, and you want to begin to try to establish contact. At this time, you may suddenly get a picture in your mind of an angel or a human-like being. Heck, you may even end up with various energies, colors, geometric shapes. In some cases, you may even get the image of an animal. This, I had noticed, especially works for people who are into the shamanic journeying type discipline. If you don't know what that is, you can look it up online, but if you're into it, you know very well what shamanic journeying is. And sometimes spirit might manifest itself to you as your guardian animal form. So be prepared for that. But, it's just one of the things that can occur. Number 5, ask your higher self to manifest as a large yellow sphere, about the size of the sun. Okay, I mean, that's one way you can do it. He goes on to say, visualize this form or image as you ask the angel to appear in this form. By doing this, you are giving your angel or your higher self or your guides or what have you a shape of your own choosing for it to manifest to you in. I mean, a big ball of light, you can't really go wrong too much with that, I suppose. It's similar to pouring water in a glass. Although the liquid is formless, it adapts itself to the shape of the glass on which it is contained. Once you have visualized this image, maintain it in your consciousness. Number 6, project yourself into the yellow sphere. Feel yourself becoming contained within the sphere of light. Unite with this energy if you feel comfortable. That part is my addition. It might seem like the energy is too burning, in which case you want to send a silent request to have the energy back off a little bit. Sometimes those higher energies aren't quite familiar with what humans can put up with and what they can tolerate. So sometimes the energy might come off a little too strong, in which case send a silent request to please tone down the energy level a bit so that you can feel more comfortable communicating or uniting with this energy, whichever you feel comfortable with. At this point, you are now one with your higher self, guardian angel, what have you. While you are in this position, you are united with that higher energy, higher self. You can ask questions, and it will give you solutions to some problems that you may have. You can and you should go ahead and ask that higher entity to help guide you along the proper path and goals in life. If you are actually dealing with the right type of entity, this information should fill you with determination, joy, and a quiet happiness. If it doesn't do these things, if it instead engenders fear, loathing, disquiet, then I would try again with a different energy. Always trust your instincts. Never trust any being you find on the astral that causes you to question its motives. Trust your inner self and your inner judgment. How often do we get information and we know we shouldn't do this thing? We don't have the logical reason, but we just know it's the wrong thing to do. And we don't listen. And then after we find out it was a mistake, then we say to ourselves, we want to beat ourselves up, why didn't I listen to my inner voice? It was speaking clearly to me and I ignored it. Learn to trust that inner voice. It won't steer you wrong if you listen to it in a state of calmness and serenity. Never respond out of anger or stress, anxiety. Don't pay attention to your inner self when you're experiencing those emotions. Get quiet, get centered, and then ask yourself how this energy feels, how that advice feels. And if it feels right, you'll feel it. Number 7, he says, stay as long as you desire with that higher energy. And when you are ready, return back to the earth and simply divide yourself from the L sphere so that you can return back to that 6-inch diameter white ball. Next, come back to earth and to your country, state, city, residence, and finally get reabsorbed into your physical body. And this completes the technique for soul level awareness. I think you'll agree that's a rather simple technique. There's not a lot of extra flowery steps. I think you'll be with me on this one that pretty much anybody who's interested in astral projection could do this exercise without too much extra assistance or help. It's rather simple. And sometimes, well, I find often, simple is better than complex. Okay, well, if you found this interesting, please hit the like button, share it with those of like minds. Subscribe if you haven't already. What questions and comments do you have? Do you have a better breathing technique? If so, share it. Share it with everyone here in the comments section. If you have any questions about this technique, go ahead and ask them. I'll do my best to answer, or perhaps you've tried similar techniques in the past and they worked for you or they didn't work for you. Go ahead and share that along with, as I said, any questions, and we'll see where we go from there. And as always, this is Rick, and I will see you on the astral plane.